Observations are not meant to, these are not meant to strike fear in the hearts of teachers or administrators as you're getting ready to think about all the things you have to do for teacher proficiency. But what these observations are entitled for you to look at is to really see what's going on as you design a classroom, some important spaces, and then also about how do you know what to look for. So we're going to talk a little bit, but first of all, I'll give you a little background on me. I've been a teacher, an administrator, gifted ed coordinator, and a college professor. And one of the reasons that I got into this program in education with MeTEOR and the environment is I also have a son that has severe ADHD. And one of the things that I really have noticed with him was the learning environment made a huge difference on not just his behavior, but his actual learning. So as we get into talking about high impact observations, I want to just reassure you that you are really doing things to help a lot of different kids. So one of the walkaways today are going to be, first of all, we're going to identify some priority areas and learning spaces for the maximum student impact in your building, and then also examine practical ways to implement high impact observation, focusing on both environments and best practice observation. So we're going to go back in time for just a minute. 20 years ago, in October of 1998, the U.S. Department of Education and the White House Millennial Council co-sponsored a conference on school design that came up with the following design principles for educational facilities. They were to enhance teaching and learning to accommodate all learners, to serve as centers of the community, to involve all stakeholders in the planning and design process, provide for health, safety, and security, make effective use of all available resources, and allow for flexibility and adaptability to changing needs. If you're in the school business right now, you know that back then this was a great pie in the sky idea. Everybody was excited and these are some things, but it rarely happened. Nowadays, this is a necessity for our schools, and one of the things that's a challenge is to exactly figure out what is going to be future ready and how's that going to look. So as we move on, I first of all want to talk to you about limitless learning. Limitless learning is very, very exciting to me because one of the things that I always think of with this is there are multiple priority areas and learning spaces for high impact, not just the classroom. As we've made steps to envision and design your school, what are your high impact zones? Have you thought of that? Today we're going to use the question and answer a lot with our program. So if you have some questions, I'd love for you to put them in the question and answer session because I'll be asking you things along as we go along this webinar. The first thing I want you to do is most of us agree that the classrooms are very important for high impact learning. But let's go a little bit deeper than that. There are many areas in your building that are high visibility and significant for creating a culture that learning happens everywhere. We, of course, will address the impact of the classroom, but let's look at some of the other spaces first. We want spaces to be not just pretty packages, but things that are really used to impact learning that everyone that's in your school community can see. We're going to start with collaborative spaces. Collaboration has really become a non-negotiable in preparing students for the future. Ensuring classrooms are equipped with collaborative spaces is key, but don't forget that other spaces might benefit from this as well. Collaborative classrooms encourage students to become active and reflective learners, while also an active learning space. But this pedagogy is associated with discussions that might start as a whole group activity and then divide into teams for discussion and evaluation. It encourages digital age literacy skills such as communication, collaboration, and teamwork. And it also provides students a social context where they can engage in problem-based activities and simulations. One of the things we see a lot with collaboration, besides just the benefits with student engagement, is also that it helps with social emotional skills as well. And you've got tons of places for collaborative spaces in your area, not just in your classroom, but possibly in other environments as well. We're going to tie a little bit more into that as we move along. This is going to be one of the first places we talk about, which is small group spaces. Sometimes these are called huddle rooms or studios, presentation spaces, or even drop zones, where kids can just drop in, talk, and collaborate. These environments are coming where students can apply what they've learned in your teaching. Content is taught through small group activities. such as PBL, case studies, role-playing, and other activities that encourage students to work actively within a small group. Then students can break into these huddle rooms. Now, a very important piece of huddle rooms to me is the fact that as a teacher, I'm able to see in there what's going on, but I'm also able to give the students the privacy to have discussions among themselves. Sometimes this might be a cave space where they're on their own and doing some things, or it may be a group collaborative work. But whatever with your small group spaces you decide to do, just ensure that all of your students know some of the behaviors and rules expectations. The next space we're going to talk about are large fixed spaces. Now, we all know about these, and I feel like these have very much impact in high visibility for your schools. Almost every parent, if you're a parent here, student has forgotten a lunch and you've had to go in the cafeteria. You may have dads and donuts. You may have moms and muffins. You may have after-school programs. You may have PTA. And these large fixed spaces are oftentimes what people see and sometimes their first impression of your school. So it's very important in these environments to ensure that students have abilities to collaborate while also having some spaces that they can use throughout the day. So one of the things I want us to chat in our first chat room is, what do you think in your area and in your school, what would be a way that you might use some of your large fixed spaces? So if you'll just type in the question box, I will answer those for you. Okay, I have Todd from Washington. Hi, Todd. Todd once said he wants to use his cafeteria to utilize some cross-grade level collaboration with students with similar interests, such as the robotic club or chess clubs or things like that. Todd, that's a great idea. Thanks for sharing that. Oh, and I've got Julie from Georgia. Hi, Julie. Julie said they'll be implementing some social emotional strategies through a special program in their district. And one of the things she sees is using that as an ability to have kids do some things like cross the table conversations, and being able then to really talk about some collaborative skills, again, tying into that social emotional thing. Some other things you might think about as you look into that are some lunchtime learning activities. Maybe during lunch you have some special tables for kids intermingle. Leadership academies are great. Kids love the spaces to be able to kind of also collaborate during the afternoons with chess clubs, things like that. We're going to move next on to common spaces. Common spaces have really become one of the most integral parts of a lot of schools. They're called many different things. Neighborhoods, they're called things such as, the hallways, forums, different things like that. But whatever they are, they are also high visibility areas for your campus. So some of these spaces may be where students go with collaborative work. They may want to use their laptop. They may use research spaces. But whatever they're for, be sure that they're have some soft seating in them for comfort, some workspace area, and as well as being able to have some visibility from all areas line of sight. The key here is to incorporate the comfortable seating and furniture that can accommodate many uses. A lot of times these spaces are used by many different grade levels and for many different activities. So just ensure that when you're planning and designing these spaces, that you've thought about all the ways you might want to use those in your campus. Our next thing we're going to talk about is innovation spaces. Many of y'all have probably heard of these maker spaces, fab labs, collaboratories. These are spaces where students really can go and do all types of project-based learning. At the core, innovation space can help develop creativity and interest in students for science, technology, engineering, math, and the arts. In an innovation space, a group of people in a single space may be working on projects either alone or in a group. Makerspaces function as sort of a mecca of peer learning and knowledge sharing. Although formal and scheduled presentations can occur, much of the learning is spontaneous and student-driven. An instructor is present. They must take the role of the guide rather than the lecturer. Innovation spaces are really all about kids making things and coming up with the ideas and innovations on their own. As we talk about our next place, I want to talk just a second about media centers, a little bit near and dear to my heart. If we call the classrooms the heart of the school, then to me, media centers are the soul. With media centers, they should have tons of different types of spaces. And sometimes as educators, we're kind of not sure exactly what to put in those because we want them to have still the essence of what a media center should be, but also spaces that could be used. So one of the things that I would really think about as I planned this is, what will this space function as? Will it have a large area where we can have some large group meetings, maybe literacy circles? Will it have some small collaborative spaces for students to work on projects? Will it have some research spaces? Will it have some spots for a comfortable reading nook where kids can go in and really get in that cave space for some deep learning? So one thing for just a second, if you have some ideas of things that you could do with this media center, I'd love for you to put it in our question and answer section, and we'll share that with our group. Okay, well, I've got Jill from Hawaii right here. Jill, this is a great idea I hadn't thought of. Jill from Hawaii said she's going to put a virtual reality zone in her library, in her media center space, because one of the things she'd like to do is have virtual field trips for her students because it's so difficult for them to travel. We all know that that's an issue for students, so being able to have that virtual reality zone is a great area. Oh, we've got something here from Linda from Louisiana. Hey, Linda. One of the things she mentioned was having a green screen. They were going to try to start a student-run television station in their campus, so the green screen would be a great touch for students, and then ability to do multimedia presentations as well. As we move on, one of the other things I think that sometimes gets a little bit ignored is our outdoor spaces as learning. Not just social emotional engagement, but also as well, we speak of students who need that time to get outside and run and play, but learning happens everywhere. So if you look here on our slides, these are just some of the activities that you could do. But as you look at these outdoor spaces, I want you to think, when kids are outside, what are they learning? Are you going to have some things that are interactive playground equipment? Would you want to have a community garden where kids could do some service learning? There's all kinds of options as you look around. Now, we've really visited in depth about some of the optimal spaces that you could use for high visibility. I think the outdoor space is one. I think the cafeteria is one. And I also think as well, all of the media center things are very important to getting that visibility out for your stakeholders in your campus. But I think there is really nowhere else as important as the classroom. One of the things that we really discuss with the ProSocial Classrooms is they have the ability for high impact learning. The ProSocial Classroom reflects essential elements in a learning environment, and we speak of these 5: proximity, teacher to students, and students to students; intellectual, physical, and emotional safety; inclusion. Inclusion is where every child feels a connection to the group. Not only is that great for social emotional engagement, but also it allows students that type to go into a little deeper cognitive rigor when they have a connection to the group, because they have that safety and ability to do that. The other piece is choice, student choice and voice. The other is student success, as well as production of language. First, I want to talk a little bit about teacher proximity. One of the ways that you can really help with teacher proximity in your new environments is having things such as the mobile teacher podium. It allows teachers the ability to move around. A lot of teachers hate to give up their desks because their things are far away in the corner of the room and they're trying to meet all the students. But a lot of our mobile platforms have locking compartments where you can put your things in it, but also just the ability to put a laptop or whatever the teacher resources the teacher might need at that time. So the proximity is able to be there for the teachers using that mobile podium. The other thing to think about is student-to-student proximity. Are you have an ability in your classroom for students to really get close and head down and really be having close proximity to have some of those deep conversations and collaboration? Our next thing we'll visit about is, is the piece of comparing these media environments to classroom, which separates students and teachers. This design lacks intent, and it's not a brain-based environment. Our media environments are specifically designed to support teacher proximity and close teacher-to-student engagement. This environmental slide does not allow equal teacher proximity. And one of the things I say often is our students who need us the most are often the ones who sit the furthest away. They don't want to be close to the teacher. They're not used to success. And until we build that safety, we need to be sure that all our teachers feel they have equal access to us. Our next topic is going to be intellectual, emotional, and physical safety. This is a huge topic to me because one of the things I truly in my heart believe is that kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And sometimes with all the stresses on all of us in education, it becomes very easy for us to sit and not know that often students cannot develop like they need to in a emotionally tight space. Think about you as a classroom, in your classroom experience. Did you feel emotionally safe? Did you feel emotionally safe? And could you be intellectually safe if you weren't emotionally safe? We talk so much about physical safety, and please do not misunderstand me that I think it is greatly, greatly important. But one of the keys that is so important to me about physical safety is we're missing the boat a little bit. One of the things that we see so much with physical safety is these kids don't have a connection to anyone. So to me, we've got to start with the emotional connection. That comes from having kids being able to present, to do things. But if you look down here on the slide of the collaboratory, we've got it set up where kids can start presenting to a partner or to two kids and then move up to classroom presentations to the whole group. They are more intellectually safe and emotionally safe and physically safe when they've had time to use all those things together. One more thing on the intellectual, emotional, and physical safety of these spaces are we giving kids the chance and the skills needed to make that successful for them? Student choice is a huge thing as well as we talk about that safety, and some kids really, really struggle with the safety, and they kind of cannot have a choice if they're not safe because we've been in little rows for so long. So when we talk about student choice, I'm talking about flexibility in their work, flexibility in their environment, and flexibility in their choice of where they sit. One of the things that I think you'll see here in this situation is you've got students working on a variety of things. You can see several teachers and helpers around there in that group, but all the children are sitting working on something they're actively engaged. One of the next things I want to talk about as well is those two things, student choice and voice. We start talking about production of language. If you really want to talk to me about the benefits of a ProSocial Classroom, it is production of language. When a student goes into a job interview, I want you to think about some of your students in your class. When they think of a job interview, it's a student that comes in and says and uses vocabulary that is based on the production of language that they're comfortable with, and they say, it really excites me to be able to be here with you today. I am very determined to do a good job for you, rather than, hey, I'm glad I'm here, so, I hope it's going to be all right. Which student do you think is going to get the job? We are asking our students to go in and do things, and some of them don't have a comfort level with production of language. One of the other pieces of production of language, as we talk about in the observations, is what type of language do we hear? What kind of language are we listening for students to have? Are they being able to produce narratives? Are they being able to use complete sentences? And is that the culture of that classroom? One of the last things I want to talk about too is classroom environments that support inquiry. Teaching and learning environments should replicate the conditions in which real-life researchers and experts work. The work at hand dictates what needs to be done and the standards to which it must be completed. Projects are authentic, worth doing, and fit in within the overall directions of the learning. I want you to think back to why this works well in our pro-social environment. One of the things is, when you talk about what students are doing, in our world, students are not told exactly what to do. They have to have a voice. They need to have a choice. They've got to have safety. And they've also got to be able to be intellectually safe to make these things. Production of language is a huge issue as well. Our next thing is learning environments that are mobile and flexible. Students and teachers work together face-to-face, online, and with other students and experts from outside the classroom. Are digital resources easily assessed in your classroom? Or is it where we have one computer through 5 kids? Now, I'm not talking about students that are just one-to-one all the time, because sometimes I think it's good for them to talk face-to-face and collaborate. But are these digital resources easily accessed by your students? And the last is, what is learned and how it is learned changes. Students must have access to robust and academically rigorous content to create new knowledge. They do this by analyzing and synthesizing information, posing problems in ambiguous situations, and interpreting content, defending solutions and points of view, designing and constructing, and evaluating. And Dave, thank you, Dave, for talking. I just saw you here. Dave just talked about formal register versus casual register. We need to allow for students to utilize the formal register with each other. All students are learning a second language in school. Dave, you are so spot on. I was in a school this week, and one of the things that they talked about was the fact that their students are really struggling with that ability to use formal register each other. It's a middle school. And I talked about setting that climate and culture, and that's one of the things that we need to do with the ProSocial Classroom. So thanks, Dave, so much for sharing that. That's awesome. Our next thing we're going to talk about is how our environments support task focus. MeTEOR environments are specifically designed to support collaborative inquiry and challenge task focus. I want to talk about that for just a second. As you'll notice through all the things we've talked about today, and we talk about observations, we talk about teacher proximity, teachers are not standing at the front of the room. They're not lecturing to a group of kids. And sometimes that really is, that collaborative inquiry focus is a little bit difficult if we're not careful. So one of the things that we really want to support our teachers in becoming are more facilitators. I say all the time to teachers, all the time, teachers should be more tired after a day of planning than after a day of teaching, because kids need to be doing the heavy cognitive lifting. Our next slide, as we talk about in this, we're going to slide on to the observation piece. But before we do that, just like you did if you were praising teachers for their, actual teaching in the classroom, we're going to kind of look at that lens a little differently as we talk about observation for learning environments. Teachers become very personal of, I know you're coming in to see if the learning environment's working, but I do feel like that you're looking at me. And one of the things we're going to do is talk about setting standards for use. If you are wanting teachers to use those collaborative spaces outside the classrooms for activities for students, we need to say, hey, guess what? We're going to have this set up, and I'm going to expect you to use that once or twice a week. I find it was very helpful for me as an administrator. I had a list of times, and if I had a teacher that wasn't on there and she just wasn't using it, I would go by and say, hey, notice you're not on there. That also kind of helps with equity and setting that expectation for teachers. The other thing I think is very important as we talk about setting standards for use is the ability to use those things in the auditorium and the cafeteria and the outside spaces. Those may be some things that we need to speak to teachers and even to students about what our expectations are. You're going to have a lot of soft seating. You're going to have a lot of flexible seating, things like that. And those students really rise to the occasion, but you may have to do a little background information, a little standard setting before you go in and have them use that information. The other is ensuring the training, oh, sorry, this just clicked off right here, is up to date. Are the teachers up to date what's going on? Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm a little bit old, and many of us older teachers, we didn't learn to teach this way. It's a little new for us. I'm not used to being in the center room. I say I'm a great whole group teacher, but I've really had to understand how to release that and not be the sage on the stage, but more of the guide on the side. A lot of our teachers are concerned with that, and one of the things to do is ensure the training is in alignment to your school vision. So for example, if you want students doing inquiry-based learning or collaborative tasks, do teachers know what that expectation is from you? I hear all the time as I go into campuses is, well, what does that look like? Tell me what student engagement looks like. What is my principal looking for? So when we talk about observations and these high impact learning environments, one of the things I think is important is to be sure your teachers are prepared for what your expectation is. We'll talk about that a little bit more in depth later, but I really do want you to think about that and ensuring that training piece is very connected to what the environment is, as well as what your expectations are. The other is providing support and coaching where needed. We've all gone in there where we gung-ho at the beginning. We're all excited. This is going to be great. And I do it just like you kind of want me to for the first 2 or 3 days, and then I get stressed. And what happens when we get stressed is we go right back to what we know. So one of the things I want to ask you really quick, and I'm doing your question and answer section, is what are some expectations you would have for uses in these new environments? Oh, okay, very good. I've got a little deal here from Ruth from Pennsylvania. Hey, Ruth. Ruth said one of the things she would like to do is really try to focus on an area. So she was going to do, well, this is a good idea. She was going to do collaborative tasks that she would really focus on ensuring her teachers knew how to plan those. I agree with you, Ruth. I think that's a great idea. Oh, okay. And I've got Carmen from New Mexico. Hey, Carmen. Carmen says that one of the things that she really would like to set for her expectations would be to ensure that that the students are all having equitable access to it as well. She said one of the things that happens she sees is that not all the kids are able to use it. So that's a great idea. I think some of that's training for teachers as well. Carmen, I think that's a great idea. And Dave, hey David, the spaces are not for disciplinary measures. Absolutely. They are higher level activities for student collaborate. You are exactly right. One of the things that I hate to hear a teacher say is, well, they have to act nice to get to use that piece of furniture, whether it's a wobble stool or whatever it is. And that really is completely defeating the purpose of what we want to do. And one of the other things, David, that you said that I completely agree with is they are for higher level activities where students collaborate. One of the things I think you've got to do when we talk about ensuring the training for teachers is, what does student collaboration look like? I cannot tell you the number of times I've gone in and the teachers say, my students are collaborating. I have groups of 4. And all the kids will have the same paper. And the collaboration is, if I struggle with something, you're going to help me do that. That's not true collaboration. So that's a big piece of that, is training our teachers to ensure that that's what our expectation actually is, that the students will be truly collaborating on tasks. Our next thing, hold on, we're having a little technical difficulty, is modernization does not necessarily lead to research-based design. Without training, teachers in classrooms migrate back to traditional formats. We see this a lot. One of the ways we see this is teachers come in, they have their desks, brand new desks, and they are right back to what they did at the beginning. Changing the environment doesn't automatically change the teaching or learning that occurs in the classroom. It is intentional and deliberate action supported by training, coaching, information, and vision. One of the things I want to talk about as we look at leading these observations is this. Do you have a vision? And if you have a vision, have you shared it with your staff? Have you shared it with your students? What do I want my school to look like? Okay, we all know this is modernization is very expensive, and we want to do things that are lasting, but we also want to set that climate and culture in our classroom, and we cannot do that unless it is intentional and deliberate. One of the things we see here, and again, we're having a few little technical difficulties, so we're going to sling through these. Sometimes what we see, so I'll just explain to you, is we see brand new chairs, like our chairs in green here, and the teachers will have brand new chairs and they will look great. They'll be so excited, and they're in rows. A lot of times we see teachers who have the students, just like David said, where the kids that are acting well get to use it, but not all the students get to use it. One of the things I think in this classroom it kind of shows is this staff has a clear vision, they have high impact furniture, and change teachers and student behaviors. I want you to question and answer for me really quick. What do you think your vision would be for your new environment And what change teacher and student behavior would you like to see that aligns to that vision? Give you just a second to answer. Okay, Bill from Boise. Hi, Bill. Yes, I agree, Bill. Bill says that one of the things he would like to see is true 21st century learning, but where his teachers forget that there's the front of the room. So, Bill, I'm going to ask you this question so you can answer it. Do you have the whiteboard at the front? Okay. He has multiple setups around the room. So that's one of the things that's very important too, especially if you're a one-on-one campus. Just remember, if you've got teacher proximity, it limits the way those kids can get off task, but you're also able to ensure that the students are looking at things. One of the things I love to do is QR codes with students, because I know that when they click that QR code, it's going to the link that I sent them to. And if it's not there and I can't see it easily, then I know that there's been a problem. One of the things that we talk about actually on our observations today is to what does it look like? When I'm going around, if I go in my classrooms, the ProSocial classrooms, if I go around to these learning zones, what does this look like? Well, the one thing you would see is collaborative grouping. You would see teacher to student proximity, student to student proximity, clarity of outcomes, and indicators of happiness. One of the ways that I see indicators of happiness is this: the teacher's smiling, the kids are smiling. No one looks like they are really upset, angry. And you can tell that climate as you walk in that classroom. The kids are on task, there's kind of that collaborative hum, and everyone is excited that you're there. So that's to me what it looks like, along with multiple and the flexibility grouping. But I think this is the most important thing to me, and where I've been the most aha moment for me as well, is what does it sound like? Well, to me, it sounds like academic vocabulary. Are the kids using that? Dave just said formal register, 100%. How are they speaking to each other? What do I hear? Do I hear productive student conversations? Not about what went over on the weekend, but actually what the task at hand is on, at the appropriate level of rigor. The other things I think is clarity of outcomes. Students know the significance of their task. They know what they're doing. And the other thing I think that says a lot is the positive interactions. One of the areas that I notice positive interactions a lot is outside, like in your little common spaces as well, or your little neighborhoods. Are students out there with positive interactions? One of you earlier mentioned having multiple age kids out in a group together. Are those positive interactions? There's nothing that builds leadership in kids by giving them positions of leadership where it's established well. The next is the MeTEOR environments directly support this task focus. And one of the ways that we are going to do that, I'm so sorry we're having a little technical difficulties today. One of the ways as we talk about this is less stress observations. Now, I will tell you that I've been an administrator, and there was nothing more stressful for me, truly, or my teacher than observations. So when I was asked to give this webinar, I kind of jumped at the chance, because one of the things that I think we've made a misnomer with is observations aren't necessarily always negative. They're really to go in and kind of see what's going on with before and after. So as we look at this, one of the things I look at through is walkthroughs. So when I'm doing observations, as we talk about a practical ideas, I have three different kinds. One is what I call a door observation. I can look down the door, I can hear the collaborative hum, I can see kind of what's going on in the classroom. That's one. The next is my teacher observation. Where is my teacher in the room when I walk in? Is there teacher proximity? Is the teacher at her desk? Is the teacher at the horseshoe table, which I call the new teacher desk? Or is the teacher up walking through students? Is the teacher talking to students? Is the teacher really engaged in what the task is? And the third thing I do is the students. What are the student conversations? You know, one of the ways I always say, I can see your learning names posted all day long on the board, but if I come into your students and say, hey, what are you doing today? Are they able to articulate what they're doing? That is a huge piece of being able to see that less stress observation. One of the things I ask the students are, how are you liking the furniture? How's the furniture working for you? If the student says, I don't know, this is always my spot, that tells me pretty quickly that the teacher's not allowed in the flexible grouping that I would like to see. One of the other walkthroughs is the spaces. When you walk through your cafeteria, when you walk through your media center, when you walk through your common areas, even outside, what is going on? Is it being used? If I never see any kids in my common area, that tells me something. Or if I only see the same kids out there day after day, that might tell you something too. The other thing is effective uses of spaces other than the classroom is how effective is that? Are you using it for specific strategic things that benefit your campus? Dads and donuts I mentioned earlier, but do you have things with your PTA? Do you have parents that come in and work? One of the things we talk about is social skills, mentor programs. Is that an area that you could use that? The other piece is planning. Are teachers planning for collaborative tasks? Is that something that they think is important to you and has aligned with your school vision? And the other thing, the last thing, is the feedback from stakeholders. You know, if you've done this modernization, especially if you're one of the first in your district, you're going to get tons of questions. People will want to know how it works. Is it worth all this hoopla? And are you happy with what you did? Well, I will tell you, there's no better PR for you than for your students to go home and tell their parents and tell their teachers at school. Invite the community in. Allow them to see the things that are going on. This is a brand new world for many of us. It's not 1998 anymore. And one of the things that we need to think about as we prepare our kids for these future-ready schools are we articulating that to our communities? Some deliberate actions I'd like you to consider are this. Walk your campuses to identify some pro-social components that currently exist and or any other gaps for further conversation. Assess your current learning environments and determine 1 or 2 immediate actions that could impact student learning, and share this information with your stakeholders. Our last question and answer for today is going to be determine 1 or 2 immediate actions that could impact student learning. Okay, thank you very much. All right, I have Liz from Texas. Hi, Liz. Liz said one of the things that she would immediately do to impact student learning would work in collaborative groups. I think that's a great idea, Liz. And just ensuring that those teachers understand that collaboration piece and providing that training that you mentioned is great as well. Okay. Oh, and I've got Jackie from Oklahoma. Hello, Jackie from Oklahoma. One of the things Jackie said she's going to do to impact student learning is to actually also show the students some of the social emotional components of collaboration. Jackie, that's a great idea. Students are not automatically going to know how to do that. Okay, well, thank you guys so much. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties a little bit tonight. But as we leave today, I want you to think about this. Which classroom provides more opportunity to create a culture of trust, collaboration, and connection? And what do you see more of in your district? Does this align with your vision? Which of these would you want your students to be part of? Thank you so much for attending our webinar series today. I'm very, very grateful for your time, and I'm very grateful for your commitment to education. One of the things that I see so often and so really exciting is this. Teachers get it. They know what they want to do. Administrators are getting it. Parents are getting it. But we've just got to get all the pieces together. So one of the things I really, really challenge you to think about and to really process as much as you can is this. Are your students able to collaborate? Are they in an environment with experiences that provide them this opportunity? It's not just about the environment. That doesn't make all the difference. The difference becomes when you create an environment with experiences that set a culture of learning at your school that says learning happens everywhere and we're preparing our kids for the 21st century. Thank you so much. If you'd like any more information, please contact Sebastian Sanchez. He will be able to get you in touch with someone locally who can help you. And we look forward to being a partner in education with you at MeTEOR. Thank you so much.